Speaker. I will be using my time to make a 5-minute statement today, and I will be splitting my time with the members for Central Okanagan, Similkameen, Nicola, and Regina Louvain. It's an honor to be back in the House representing my Kildonan and St. Paul constituents on the very last day of the parliamentary session. And although this Liberal government has decided to shut down Parliament during the worst crisis to face Canadians in living memory, I will do my best to speak and advocate on their behalf with the little time we have remaining. Unfortunately, the Prime Minister has only allowed parliamentarians 4 hours to debate and approve $87 billion in spending, or roughly $362 million every minute, which may be a record in the history of Canadian Parliament. If the member opposite was listening, he might learn something. This is truly unprecedented. The very purpose of Parliament is to provide checks and balances on government power. If we don't have the opportunity to question the government, to study emerging issues in committee, or to put forward alternative solutions, how are we supposed to do our job and be that check on power if we're not sitting? In effect, the government is telling Canadians that they have nothing to worry about, just to trust them, that there is no need for Parliament to meet or to provide oversight on the massive spending that's been going on for 3 months. And unfortunately, between their power grabs and the long history of ethics violations, to say opposition parties are skeptical would be an understatement. In fact, there has not been this great a need for parliamentary oversight since the Second World War. The last few months have not been easy for anyone. Some have been far more severely impacted than others. Thus far, 3 million people have lost their jobs and 13% of the working population remains unemployed. We know women have been impacted to a greater degree than men, and rates of human trafficking and spousal abuse have reportedly gone up. 8,000 people have lost their lives to COVID-19, and the well-being of countless others has been impacted from the thousands of delayed surgeries and the severe mental health impacts that isolation has had on the nation. To be elected as a member of Parliament during this unprecedented time has been an unforgettable experience with many challenges and difficult days. Speaking with hundreds of constituents and small businesses in my community who have been deeply and negatively impacted by the pandemic has been very heartbreaking. But they will not be forgotten by the Conservative team. We are all working tirelessly on their behalf, and we will represent every Canadian left behind by this government's inadequate response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The possibility of a second wave of the pandemic is of great concern to me and the constituents of Kildonan and St. Paul, and this Liberal government has provided, frankly, very little to Canadians to give them confidence that we will be prepared and financially equipped to handle a second wave, since we barely made it through the first one. We're seeing this firsthand in the Prime Minister's refusal to provide an economic fiscal update during this sitting, despite the Parliamentary Budget Officer calling for it. It is critical that Canadians know if we have any financial flexibility to extend programs before they are extended. That is key. Otherwise, we're just guessing and hoping that it all works out and the country doesn't go bankrupt, which is really not a great strategy if you ask me. As one of 338 MPs and one of only 21 official opposition MPs in Canada, I ask the Liberal government, with all sincerity, to use their 3 months of hiatus from oversight and accountability to prepare tirelessly for the second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic, to prepare PPE, testing, contract tracing capacity, whatever is necessary to give Canadians confidence that they can actually do this job. And beyond that, that they acknowledge that Canadian small businesses and the millions of Canadian workers they employ cannot afford to go back into isolation, not financially and not for the good of their mental health. Neither can the taxpayer afford to subsidize the pandemic response effort at nearly $100 billion per month without serious tax increases and financial consequences at the family kitchen table. This Liberal government has the responsibility to present a plan and to communicate it effectively to Canadians so that they can prepare in the coming months. Canadians deserve answers on how prepared we are and what the financial outlook for Canada is, so I implore this government to be transparent, honest, and accountable. It is their duty to Canadians. And to conclude, I sincerely thank the frontline workers in every industry in Kildonan and St. Paul, from healthcare to grocery stores and gas stations, for quickly adapting to the first wave of this pandemic and physical distancing requirements, and even organizations who, despite being forced to drastically change their daily routines, rose to the occasion in service of our community. So churches, gurdwaras, synagogues, elderly care homes, grocery stores, schools, and hundreds of small businesses in Kildonan and St. Paul rallied with a true Canadian spirit of resilience and innovation to get the community through the first wave of the pandemic. And honestly, that really gives me hope for the second wave and for whatever comes after that. And I do believe that we will get through this together. Thank you, Madam Chair.